In the Alaskan wilderness, things do not stay buried because of time. They stay buried because someone wanted them forgotten. Up here in the cold, the ice preserves more than artifacts. Preserves intentions, secrets, nightmares in perfect condition. If you dig long enough, the past will stare back at you with eyes that never closed. January 1st began like that. A morning so cold it hurt to breathe. The kind of cold that steals sound from the air and makes the entire world feel held in place. Our research station sat alone on a sheet of white that stretched toward the horizon like a frozen ocean. The wind had carved ridges along the snow during the night, and the previous storm had shifted a section of the ice field behind the northern ridge. When we saw the displacement on satellite view that morning, we assumed it was just a pressure break. Maybe a hollow pocket collapsing. It was not. We hiked out with scanning equipment, the air so still the crunch of our boots felt like an intrusion. The snow was brittle, glittering with tiny frozen flakes that shimmered whenever the faint morning light tried to break through the cloud cover. At first we saw nothing, just ice, just more of the same landscape we had lived in for months. Then one of the team called out my name. A corner of metal jutted from the ice, barely visible beneath layers of frost. I brushed the surface with my gloved hand, revealing the edge of a crate frozen solid beneath the sheet. It was enormous, too large to have been carried by any standard transport. Its panels were thick, reinforced, secured with latches I had only seen on government containers meant to survive impact and extreme temperature. Someone had buried it deliberately. We worked through the morning, using heated tools to melt the surrounding ice. Steam rose into the frigid air as if the crate itself breathed. The deeper we dug, the more wrong it felt. The metal was pristine. No rust, no decay, as if it had been placed there yesterday, not years ago. When the last layer of frost slid away, a plaque revealed itself near the corner. Not an identification tag, not a shipping code, just a small metal plate with engraved letters. Do not wake it. The words punched a hole in my breath. They were too direct, too absolute. Not the type of warning a scientist writes. It felt ceremonial, final, plea or a threat. The others glanced at me, waiting for my order. Curiosity can be a curse in this line of work. But responsibility is heavier. I told them to proceed. We brought the crate back to the station using snow crawlers, the cargo bed straining beneath the weight. The metal radiated a cold so intense it formed frost on our coats even through thermal padding. We secured it in our main lab, the walls vibrating slightly when we lowered it onto the steel floor. I examined the warning tag again. The edges were scratched. The letters looked older than the crate. Someone had hammered them into the plate by hand. The message felt personal. Do not wake it. The lab lights cast a harsh glow across the crate. For a long moment no one spoke. We had found meteor fragments, old mining equipment, even broken Cold War sensors before. But never anything that came with a message like this. We began the thawing process carefully. Sensors placed on the surface recorded temperature, density, and pressure changes. The metal began to sweat frost. Drops of liquid pooled beneath it even though the lab was kept near freezing. The crate exhaled faint wisps of cold vapor like something sleeping inside it was breathing through the seams. Hours passed. One by one, the exterior bolts loosened under the shifting metal. My team grew quieter with each sound. The air felt heavier, as if the crate displaced more than just space. When the lid finally loosened, we lifted it as a group. A blast of cold filled the room, hitting us so sharply we shivered through insulated suits. Inside was a body, humanoid in shape, but not human. Its skin was the color of deep frost, pale with veins that shimmered faintly beneath the surface. The limbs were long, too long for normal proportion. The fingers tapered into narrow points. and its face, though frozen, carried expressions that did not belong to any species we knew. The mouth was slightly open, revealing teeth shaped like something caught midway between mammal and something older, something ancient. The creature was enclosed in a block of ice, suspended mid-motion, as if reaching toward something, or away. I stepped closer. My fingertips grazed the ice. Felt warm. That should have been impossible. One of the team whispered, barely audible, "Is it alive?" I did not answer, not because I doubted, because I was afraid of the truth forming in my mind. The position of the body, the way the ice encapsulated it, not like it died peacefully, more like it was frozen mid-struggle, mid-breath, mid-heartbeat. We set up thermal scanners, carefully monitoring the internal temperature. The readings made no sense. The ice around its chest was melting faster than the rest. Its torso seemed to release heat even though it was still encased in solid frost. Then the creature's eyelid twitched. A small motion, barely visible, but undeniable. We froze. The entire lab fell silent. Even the machinery seemed to hold its breath. I leaned closer, watching for another sign. The ice around the creature's head cracked. A thin fracture, then another. The sound echoed through the room like something waking from a long and unwilling sleep. The creature's chest shifted beneath the ice. Only once, but enough. Enough to tell us one thing with absolute certainty. It had heard us. The cracking sound echoed through the lab like a whisper traveling through bone. None of us moved. None of us breathed. The fracture along the creature's chest widened slowly, releasing a brief thread of warm vapor that drifted upward like smoke rising from embers. I stared at the readouts on the monitor. The temperature inside the ice block was rising far too quickly. Not gradually, not as a result of our thawing equipment. It surged in sudden spikes, then dropped again, then surged once more, like a heartbeat struggling to remember its rhythm. One of the interns finally broke the silence. "Sir, that is impossible. There is no heat source inside the ice." I wanted to agree. I wanted to tell them the monitor was malfunctioning. But every instinct inside me knew better. The crate had not been buried because of environmental hazard or contamination. It had been buried because whatever was inside it was never meant to be found. The creature's chest shifted again, a subtle movement barely pushing against the ice. But movement, nonetheless. Beneath that translucent surface, the ribs shimmered like chiseled stone. The skin beneath the frost glowed faintly, as if something warm pulsed within. I stepped closer, unable to look away. The creature's face remained frozen in an expression I still could not decipher. Fear, rage, pain, or something that belonged to an emotion older than anything human. The eyes were closed. The mouth parted just enough to hint at breath it no longer took. Yet the ice continued to melt, and the temperature inside the lab began to drop. At first it felt like a draft. Then the air thinned. My breath fogged heavily in front of me. The warmth from the machinery no longer touched my skin. The cold radiating from the creature did not feel natural. Felt intentional. The power flickered. Not once. 3 times. Each time the room dimmed, the creature's chest rose just slightly. On the final flicker, its eyelids trembled once more. My team backed toward the far wall instinctively. No one dared speak. I whispered, though I do not remember deciding to. "If you are alive, do not move. Do not struggle. You are safe." It was a lie. And the creature, if it heard me, knew it. The ice around the torso cracked in a long diagonal vein. A sound like frozen glass splitting under pressure rippled through the room. The vibration traveled into the floor, up through the metal tables, and into the soles of my boots. I turned to the instruments again. Temperature inside the ice is rising at a rate of The numbers jumped, then dropped, then spiked again so violently the monitor froze solid, the display frosting over from the inside. Anomalous electrical activity, one of the researchers said with a shaky voice. He tapped the screen. It would not respond. Then, without warning, every machine in the room powered down. Lights, scanners, heating units, the hum of the generator. All gone. The silence that followed was absolute. The cold deepened instantly, as though the creature's presence drew warmth out of the air like breath from a dying fire. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, steady but too loud. Someone cursed under their breath. Another reached for a flashlight. I grabbed mine and pointed it at the creature. That was when I saw it. Its eyes, open, not fully, not wide, but enough. A thin sliver of darkness beneath heavy lids. The pupils were not round, not animalistic. They shimmered like polished obsidian catching the faintest light. I stepped back without thinking. The creature did not move. It only watched, the way a predator watches from behind glass, knowing the glass will not hold. The power flickered again, then died entirely. Darkness swallowed the lab. Only the faint glow from the ice block illuminated the room. Pale and unnatural, as if the creature generated light by itself. The cold became suffocating. Someone whispered, "Is it breathing?" I wanted to answer, but before I could speak, the creature's hand shifted inside the melting ice. Not a twitch, not a spasm, a deliberate motion, fingers flexing, testing the surrounding frost. The crate creaked under the internal pressure, scraping against the metal floor. Frost formed rapidly along the seams, thickening into crystal patterns that spread outward like veins. The temperature dropped again. I felt it in my bones. "We need to leave," I said quietly. No one argued. We backed toward the exit, moving slowly so as not to disturb whatever existed inside the crate. But just as my hand reached the door handle, one of the researchers gasped. "Sir, look." I turned. The ice block was no longer intact. The fissures had spread across the entire surface in seconds, branching like cracks in a frozen lake. The creature's chest rose once more. Then the ice shattered. Not explosively, not violently, but with a slow, long exhale, as though the crate itself sighed. The creature inside slumped slightly, suspended by only a thin layer of frost around its back. The arms hung loose. The body sagged. Then, starting at the spine, the ice began to melt in a rapid wave. Too fast, too warm, as if the creature were radiating heat from within. The power surged back on for a brief moment, lights flickering like dying sparks. In that half-second of illumination, I saw something that stole the air from my lungs. The creature's eyes were fully open, and it was staring at me. Every instrument in the station surged, then died again. Darkness returned, but the creature did not disappear. Not this time. I heard it rise, a faint crack of joints adjusting after a long sleep. A wet sound, like ice sliding off skin. Something heavy shifted, brushing against the metal crate wall. Then silence. Total silence. Even the wind outside seemed frozen. Someone whispered my name, trembling, but the voice came from behind me, not from my team. I turned slowly. My flashlight flickered once, then died. In that final flicker of light, I saw the creature standing, free, awake, and watching me with eyes that remembered something I should never have known. There are things the cold can preserve that never should have survived time. Memories, voices, footprints no wind dares to erase. I learned that the night the creature woke was not an ending but an origin. Everything that followed is the reason I am speaking these words now, hidden far from the life I once lived. I have told no one the full truth until this moment. Not the researchers who fled with me that night. Not the officers who questioned our scattered reports. Not the men in dark coats who arrived at the station before dawn, forbidding us from returning. Some truths are too heavy to share in daylight. Some truths follow you even when you flee into the dark. Let me begin with the part no one else saw. When the creature stood in that lab, the darkness around it bent. It did not grow or shrink, but folded inward like something unseen was pulling the shadows closer to its body. The ice at its feet hissed, steaming into the air. The cold in the room was still unbearable, yet the vapor rising from its skin came from heat far hotter than the human body could produce. We could not see the creature clearly. The emergency lights flickered only enough to paint its silhouette. It was tall, almost painfully so, with joints that bent at angles suggesting a structure built for climbing or hunting. But its face was the worst part. Even in brief flashes of light, I could not tell if it was angry or lost or simply awake after too long in the dark. It did not speak in any human way. It did not growl. It breathed, and each breath felt directed, as if it exhaled not air but intention. When it stepped toward us, the sound was soft, padded foot on tile. But behind that softness was a weight that made the floor tremble. My team scattered. One screamed. Another fell. I heard metal crashing as someone tripped over a table. I froze. The creature turned its head toward me. Its eyes were not bright. They were not glowing. They were simply aware. Aware of me. Aware of the fear strangling my breath. Aware that I had opened the crate that bore the warning no one should ignore. Do not wake it. We did not wake it. That is the truth. It woke itself. And as I stood facing it in that pitch-black laboratory, I felt something that no scientist should ever feel. Recognition, not of the creature, of myself reflected in its gaze. Something in it understood me. Not the man I was, but the man I feared I could become if I kept peeling back the layers of the world's hidden truths. The blizzard outside roared then, slamming against the metal siding of the station hard enough to shake it. The lights flared for one long, tortured second. In that instant, the creature turned away from me as if the storm itself called to it. Then, with a single stride, it crossed the room. The wall near the exit dented inward before bursting outward, spraying snow and shards of frozen metal into the air. The wind swallowed the sound of its departure. Snow filled the lab like ocean surf, and in the whiteout, the creature vanished into the storm. It left behind nothing except melted ice and footprints that steamed briefly before freezing solid. I told the team to stay inside. I told them not to follow. But fear makes people irrational, and two ran out into the storm before I could stop them. Their flashlight beams flickered in the white haze. Then one screamed. Then the other. We never found their bodies. The government team arrived 2 hours later. They sealed the lab, burned the crate fragments, confiscated every recording, and ordered us to remain silent. Their report claimed a refrigeration malfunction caused an explosive decompression that resulted in structural failure and 2 fatalities. A lie so thin it cracked in my hands. They sent me home the next day with a non-disclosure order and the quiet promise that my life would end poorly if I spoke another word. I should have been relieved. I should have accepted that the nightmare was contained. But nightmares do not stay contained. They linger. That winter followed me. I moved south for a time, changed stations, changed fields, left biology behind and hid behind administrative work. Yet every night when the wind howled across rooftops or rattled windows, I heard something in it. Not words. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Patient. The same breath I heard in the lab seconds before the creature woke. 3 years passed. Then 5. Then 10. And every winter someone from that original team went missing. One vanished from his home in Colorado. Another disappeared hiking in British Columbia. A third was found wandering an airstrip in Anchorage, miles from where he lived, frostbitten and delirious, repeating only one phrase. It is awake. I kept quiet for nearly 20 years. I tried to pretend the sound of footsteps in the snow outside my window was imagination. I tried to ignore the feeling that something enormous passed through the woods behind my home without disturbing a single branch. I tried to sleep through the soft tapping against my door that came only during blizzards. Then something changed. 2 winters ago, while I slept, I heard a second heartbeat in my chest. Not my pulse. Another rhythm. Faint, offbeat, as if something listened from inside me. I woke gasping, drenched in cold sweat. I pressed a hand to my chest and waited. Minutes passed before the sound faded. Came back 2 nights later. And again the week after that. I went through every medical test I could without alerting the wrong people. They all came back normal. No murmurs. No arrhythmia. Nothing to explain the echo inside my ribs. That was when I understood what the creature meant to do. It did not kill us that night. It marked us. I do not know if the heartbeat belongs to it or something it carried inside the ice. But I know this much. The crate was not meant to contain a specimen. It was meant to contain a contagion, presence, a hunger, something ancient and patient enough to wait for the right moment. I do not know if it walks this world in a form we would recognize. I do not know if it hunts or hides or simply watches from snow drifts that never melt. But I know this: when we opened that crate, we did not release a creature. We released its purpose. And now, as I speak these words into a recorder that no one may ever hear, I feel the second heartbeat again. Stronger, closer. You want to know the truth. The tag was not a warning for us. It was a warning for whatever lives beyond us. Do not wake it. We did not wake it. It woke us. It is waking me still. And I fear the next heartbeat I hear will not be in my chest. It will be behind me, in the snow, waiting.